the game. You don't play to just play it. Come after me. I'm a man. I'm for you. Can't wait. Let's go.
All right, here we go. So what's going on, everybody? You already know Tuesday night here for the big three. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. So we got Daniel Barry up in the chat. It's his birthday. Happy birthday, Daniel Barry. And Jory's here. What's going on? So look, we have a lot to get into. Yes, the NFL season's over with, but we're still going to talk some NFL on here. Let's talk about the NBA. They're on a little bit of an all-star break. It's been talked about all over the sports networks. So why not have the three of us dive into it as well? But before we get into everything, Jake, how are you doing tonight?
Man, I'm doing great. I'm really excited to talk about NBA All-Star Weekend. We do have some football stuff we want to talk about as always. I'm just excited for the show. I'm doing great.
Yeah. And then up here in the top right, got Brett. Brett, how are you doing tonight as well?
Oh, I'm feeling great. I had to miss last week. Had to go watch, Miami absolutely beat the brakes off the Bucks. But I'm back, and I'm really happy to be back. Looking forward to tonight.
Like Doc says, you just gotta be patient. Have a long road trip. The scheduling, it's all really tough right now. It's just really tough.
Just making excuses.
I guess if they end up turning it around, you'll look back at it and you'll laugh at what he said. But he's setting you up because if they lose early in the playoffs, just know he came in during the toughest stretch and that they just never recovered from it. But we'll go ahead and get started with our first topic here. I mean, look, I feel like last week I literally joked about would a team score over 200 in the All-Star game. I actually didn't think it was actually going to happen. And what do you know? It happens this year. The East scored 50 points in each of the quarters. Not like the West where it really stopped either. But, 211, 186. Everybody's talking about the effort of the game. LeBron's after the game talking about we got to do something. Anthony Edwards basically said it's a break. Nobody wants to be competitive. So I feel like where we have to start with is the All-Star game just broken beyond repair right now? We'll start with you, Jake.
Beyond repair is a bit of a stretch. I will say the NBA All-Star game is completely broken and not worth watching until the players start to care. Like the players that are involved, once they start caring, once they start playing defense, and once like the NBA community that's involved, that's the commentators, that's the people that are around it, don't clown guys for playing defense and for trying and to make it a competitive game. Until those things happen, there is no way to save the All-Star game. No different scoring methods. No, they have like that ELO thing where they with the points. None of that's going to matter until the players start to care. I mean, I watched some highlights because this has been trending everywhere. I watched some highlights of NBA All-Star games in the early 2000s with Jordan and Kobe, Jason Kidd, and they're playing defense. They're getting after each other. They're competitive. They want to win. And, Kobe said it best where he's like, the All-Star game for me is a big deal because it's the best against the best. And I want to prove that I'm better than these guys that I'm going up against. I want to show my dominance, assert my dominance, and make it kind of like a mental game. And when they're not taking it serious, when they're just scoring like this, it's a turnoff. Like we said, like Kyle mentioned, a team's going to get to 200 jokingly. And I said, if a team gets to 200, I'm just going to not watch. Like, it's just going to be a huge turnoff. And that's what it turned out. I didn't even watch the end of the game because it's just, I want to see some defense. If I wanted to see a game like this, I would just hop on my PlayStation and play 2K. Like, it's just, I would just play 2K and just have fun with it. So it's not broken beyond repair, but the only way to fix it is for the players to actually start caring about the effort that's involved.
Yeah, I mean, that would definitely help. The problem's going to be how do you get there? So, Brett, I know you're gonna. I'll let you answer the is it broken part, and then my second question, I guess, once we go back around, will be, what format would you try at this point? Like they tried the fantasy draft with the two captains. That worked for maybe a year or two. It just turned around like this. They went back to East versus West, where everybody thought, yeah, that'll fix it. It gotten even worse. So what does Adam Silver, what did the NBA actually do with the game? But Brett, I'll let you answer if it's broken beyond repair, which I do agree is a bit of a stretch, but that's just the question at hand right now.
Yeah, right now it's absolutely cooked because none of the guys want to care. They treat it as it's a break. They don't treat it as a game. All it really would take to fix it is a handful of guys coming in and actually just playing high intensity or just playing defense. Nobody wants to get embarrassed. So let's say if somebody like Anthony Edwards comes in and starts playing actual defense, start ripping everybody, you're going to have to match his intensity or you're going to get embarrassed. All it would take is for some of these guys to care, but the reality is that's just not going to happen. So you can try to incentivize them, but you can't incentivize any of these guys with money. If you make the All-Star team, you're probably on a max, super max, or making $20 million plus a year. So it's not like money's going to be an issue. You'd almost have to like go all in and go like old baseball rules. Hey, if you win this game, you get a home field advantage in the finals. That might work, but I don't think they'd ever go for that. So at the end of the day, it is absolutely cooked as long as these players just don't want to give effort and they don't want to care. So I would love for it to matter again like it did in the early 2000s, but just not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, and look, I get the whole home court thing, but I don't want the fate of my Celtics resting on Trae Young in an All-Star game. I'm not interested in that at all. But hold on. Steven said, didn't watch the All-Star game, not interested because players aren't playing any defense. And then he said players won't play the All-Star game because risking not getting injured if they change the rules. I mean, look, I've heard about the whole risking injury, but like Brett said, and like I saw, 90s, 2000s, guys played defense and, they came out of it. I don't remember any injuries in the All-Star game. So it can be done. And we're not even asking you to play like lockdown defensive player of the year type defense. Like just actually give some effort. It's literally turned into inbound the ball, a quick pass up the sideline, and then people just get out the way. Like, I mean, I don't get it. And, the crowd, they'll do their little oohs and ahs, but I feel like even this year, it was kind of quiet for a lot of the game. So it seems like the fans have kind of caught on to, like, what are we wasting our time sitting here watching this for? And the commentators, because I know, Brett, you brought that up. Somebody needs to tell, like, Reggie Miller and Candace Parker, because they were celebrating everything like it was a highly contested game. And I feel like that was sending the wrong message. Because I know, like, Draymond and Barkley would tell kind of like how it is, like, this is boring to watch. But those two were just loving every minute of it. So I guess the second question was, if you were running the All-Star game, what format would you try that you think might increase the intensity? If there is one.
Once again, it's not really going to matter unless the players want to play, like unless they want to bring the intensity. You could go USA versus World, East versus West, Hood versus Suburbs, North versus South, East versus West. It doesn't really matter what format you bring. It all comes down to one thing. It just comes back to the players. Do they want to play and do they want to give effort? Because if they don't, it doesn't matter how you split up the teams. Like Luka and Jokic looked so bored out there, and everybody else did too. So as long as nobody's there that wants to play, I don't think the format really matters. It's going to come down to these players.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've heard rumors floating out of like a 3-on-3 tournament that might change. That suburb versus hood, like Jory said, that was great, Brett, by the way. That would be one I might actually watch just to see all the ramifications from those decisions and everything. But like a 3 versus 3 tournament, I've heard, but again, it'd be cool. You would watch it for the first time to see how it plays out. And if the guys don't care, they're not giving a crap, then why should the fans? I think that's the message this year in particular hit. with the East scoring 50 points in every single quarter is they don't care. Why should I care? There's so many more options for entertainment, options for our attention that if there's a product like this, it's not entertaining. Jory had mentioned that Kobe played, his butt off in the All-Star game. Why can't these guys? We're not asking for guys to play like Kobe, where he's super pissed off and locked in and doing his jaw thing. You could bring it down a few notches and that would still raise the level of the NBA All-Star game because we want intensity. We want to feel like there's rivalries that like when Kobe was out there or Jordan was out there, he's like, I want to prove that I'm better than Clyde. I want to prove that I'm better than Jordan. I want to prove that I'm better than Tracy McGrady, Carmelo, LeBron, whoever it is. And it doesn't feel like any of that exists. So why bother? Like, why bother playing it? At this point, can we like just announce the teams and then just we all get a nice break? Because I don't know if there's anything that's going to change until the players' attitude changes.
Yeah, and look, there is one player who definitely would probably affect it, and that's Russell Westbrook. Like if you could put Russell Westbrook in this game, he'd probably go 300 miles an hour, and he might be the type of mentality and guy that you would need. Problem is he's a little older, and I know a lot of people have been talking about Anthony Edwards because this was his first time in it. He was a guy who I guess like some people are putting hopes that maybe he could be kind of the spark to change it. But when he comes out and says it's a break and nobody wants to be competitive, it's not necessarily the right message to send for the generation that's going to come once, LeBron, Steph, and those guys leave. Which I guess will blend to another question because I heard a lot during the broadcast and a lot during All Star Weekend about the next face of the NBA. Because whoever that face is going to be, I guess it's going to be their job to fix the All-Star game mentality, which means that this one had to fall on LeBron since he's been the face for so long. But who do you think would be the next face of the NBA?
The next face of the NBA, ironically, right now, normally the face of the NBA is clear-cut best player on the planet. It was MJ, and right now it's LeBron. I would probably say now you're looking at like Jokic, Giannis, the American-born player. If you want that, the best one is probably Tatum out of that bunch, maybe, but that's actually young and not like in their mid-30s. Let me clarify that, but yeah, I think that'd be like Jokic or Giannis would be the next up.
Yeah, I'd say that those are all good answers. Luca, like people have been saying that Anthony and Steven in the chat have been pointing out. I think Luca has the chance to really be the big face. It helps when a primary ball handler can be the face of the NBA because they control the action. They can control kind of the fate for their team. So I could see Luca being the face. He does need to have some more winning, involved. I know we got to the Western Conference Finals, but we need more of that for him to become the face. But there's kind of this weird, I don't want to say power vacuum, but it feels like for the longest time it was, Jordan, Kobe, Duncan, LeBron, like Steph, like this pretty good concrete core of players. And now it's all pretty kind of even with all these other players. And a lot of them, like you mentioned, Brett, are international with Jokic, with Giannis, with Luka. You could argue the three best players in the league. And then Embiid as well, being up there when he's healthy. I'd say Luka's probably the next bet, also because of his age and because of what he can do. But it's not as clearly defined as the NBA's seen since before Magic and Bird. Like it's been that long since there's been a really big question mark as to who's the face of the NBA.
Yeah, John brought up SGA. Steven said honorable mention Jokic maybe. Luka and LeBron score a lot, and they both don't play defense. That's from Anthony. Well, I mean, if Luka's the next face, then we could forget about the All-Star game changing because, like we said,
exactly,
we see how he approaches it. Jokic, look, I feel like Jokic is the type that, like, he's fine being an NBA superstar, but I don't think he'd want the responsibility to necessarily be the face of the league.
He
Like,
didn't want to go to the championship parade after they won.
yeah,
He wanted to go home. He was like, "Oh, I have to stay here like 3 or 4 more days." Like he looked legitimately bummed. Like he can't be the
yeah,
face. I love Jokic for the record, but he can't be the face if the day the season ends, he goes back to his home country. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way.
hmm
Like he can do whatever he wants. But to be the face of the league, you have to be just a little bit more involved in your presence in the NBA.
yeah. I feel like Anthony Edwards probably has the personality for it. He likes to be kind of funny and definitely show his personality. I know a lot of people talk about Tatum as kind of dry and like reserved and very unassuming. So it might be tough for him, but I mean, he was asked about it at the podium and he said if he wins a title, he probably has to become the face of the league, which obviously,
Yeah.
like you said, Jake, winning definitely goes with it. And out of the young guys, you'd probably have to say Tatum has probably accomplished the most out of all of them. So maybe it is Tatum. I don't know. We'll see. Curran, what's going on? Luka been a better defender than last year.
I will
And
say he has definitely been much better. You see the
yeah,
clips where he's not engaged at times, but he's been a lot more locked in. He's definitely much improved from last year to this year on defense.
I'm gonna mention a non-American that's young because Luka is just outside the perimeter to be the next young player, like in 7-10 years. Could be Sabonis. What about Curry? Well, I mean, Curry's like 35 at this point,
Yeah,
so he's a
he's
little
been a
too old.
face. He's been a face,
Yeah,
but in a few years, he's not going to be able to carry this on. Now, he can still play great. His game's going to age really well, but you can't be the face of the league when your athleticism is going to wane like it is for him.
yeah.
It's just not that next generation is what we're talking about there.
Although, speaking of Curry, I guess we could go to the next one because we had the Steph versus Sabrina shooting 3-point competition. I guess I gotta give Sabrina some credit for shooting from the NBA line. I know she said she practices from there because a lot of people were wondering how they were gonna, make it work. But the first question is gonna be: should this be a staple of the All-Star game? A shooting competition between whether it's like Sabrina or once Caitlin Clark gets the WNBA or whoever you want versus an NBA player, or should they maybe just take the 3-point contest and do WNBA and NBA? I don't know, but should it be a staple every year?
I'll go first. I think it should. I think this is something that was definitely helped All Star Weekend become more appealing, draw more eyes on the product, and got people more hyped. I was really hyped for this one. Of all the events, this was the one I wanted to see the most. Um, you know, I thought that Steph wouldn't be able to pull it out, but I think they should do this every year. I think it's a great way for the NBA to grow the WNBA, which is something that
Mhm.
Adam Silver has been trying really hard to do. They're trying to make it more profitable, trying to bring more eyes onto it. And if you can have guys like Steph or other great 3-point shooters in there, especially if like Caitlin Clark comes in and is involved in that, that's going to be great. I never thought of the idea of just bringing in the WNBA into the 3-point shooting contest. I think you could do that maybe a few years down the road, but the idea of one-on-one, the best versus each, could go really well as far as like just showing that the women are just as good as the men when it comes to shooting, and this is a real product. Because so many people think that the WNBA just isn't real basketball; it's not worth watching. And it was a great product. I thought both of them showed up really well. Even with Steph winning, the acknowledgments that he gave to her were great, and I thought it was the
Mhm.
perfect way for that event to go.
Yeah, right.
No, I agree. I would add more women to the 3-point contest. Heck, you can even maybe add them to the skills competition if you really wanna. Hell, maybe make it part of the WNBA 3-point contest. If you win, you're invited to the NBA 3-point competition too, along with like Sabrina, Caitlin Clark, and whoever else wants to come. I think all it does is put more eyes on women's sports, and I think that's an extremely phenomenal thing. And Sabrina showed that they can shoot with the best of them. She wasn't able to topple Steph, but that's all right. 26, that is just as good as Dame, who won the normal men's competition. So They showed that they can shoot, so let's bring more over. I would absolutely love to see some more women talent in the 3-point contest. And if your takeaway from that was she should have shot from the women's line, just shut the hell up.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, so I feel like if they don't do, because Anthony put he'd like to see the tag team 3-point contest, which I guess would be interesting. Let's say next year it was Sabrina and Caitlin Clark versus, I don't know, Steph and Dame. Let's just say since Dame won the men's 3-point contest, do that 2v2. That would definitely bring a lot of eyes to, especially throwing in Caitlin Clark. But yeah, if they keep it at 1v1, would you rather that they do like the winners of each just meet up, I guess, the following year, or leave that to a vote or something like that? How do you think they would probably go about picking the
I think they should be able to vote on it, and also I think it's once again the winner of the WNBA 3-point contest should get an automatic invite at their All-Star weekend, and then maybe vote for a couple more. Who do the fans want to see there? So I think it should be a couple vote-ins plus let's whoever wins the 3-point contest should also get an automatic invite if they so choose.
Okay.
Yeah, if we're doing the 1 versus 1, I think just having a vote could be really good. It's gonna be more engaging for the audience. People love voting for the NBA All-Star starters, things like that. So that could get the NBA fandom engaged for both sides. Everyone's gonna have to figure out who they want from the WNBA. But I think having winners from the WNBA 3-point contest going into the men's would be that's a great idea, Brett, to kind of give some better stakes and things we can look forward to from the WNBA side to the NBA, but just make it voting if we're going to do just a 1 versus 1. Let the fans decide who they want to watch, and then we can have the best matchup in the fans' eyes.
Got what's going on, Aaron? Caitlin Clark better than LeBron? Well, apparently Aaron just came in looking for violence because the LeBron fans gonna come after you after that one. But I mean, hey, maybe once we look back at her career, maybe she'll have more of an impact. Who knows? She's definitely the biggest name going right now. But yeah, I mean, like everybody said in the chat, it probably was the highlight of the weekend, which Adam Silver has to love because now, I mean, I know you're joking, but because now it builds anticipation for the WNBA season. Seeing Sabrina come off that performance, now you'll be watching to see, can she, I guess, get started going during the season, light it up from 3. Who knows? Stake her claim as the best shooter in the WNBA because they do have a lot of sharp shooters in that league, and maybe some might be coming for her. Who knows? But Anthony says nobody's scared of LeBron. I've thought that too. I've heard some people say as big as he is, he's probably intimidating. I'd go 3 rounds in the ring against LeBron. Why not? I don't know. But yeah, also it's kind of cool that he has a little WWE type belt. I thought that was pretty nice to do it.
I love belts like that. That's always great.
All right, let's hit up another event. All right, so the slam dunk competition, which once again probably was a dud. I said last week I'm not really sure what people are expecting at this point. There's only so much you can do. I mean, if you want something else, maybe throw a trampoline out there and let them go crazy. I don't know, but Jaylen Brown, he caught boos from the crowd. He's been kind of ridiculed all over social media. And I think my first question will be, is it warranted? Let's start there.
So I think this is interesting because I don't think so. He didn't do anything wrong. He went out there and did his dunks. You have people over there crying every year, complaining, we need all-stars in the dunk contest. Come on. Why doesn't anybody want to do in the dunk contest? Well, we finally get an all-star that's eager to go into the dunk contest and give us some dunks. And then we just roast him the entire time and then complain about his dunks. If anything, this year has validated why no all-star wants to do the dunk contest. Because they're just going to be held under a microscope and ridiculed. So I think that criticism is not warranted. Not only that, I just think that it's absolutely insane that every year everybody cries for all-stars in the dunk contest. Jaylen Brown's like, I got you. And then we just ridicule him for the next couple days. So good for Jaylen Brown for entering.
Yeah, I mean, Brett, I had a whole thing prepared and you kind of literally took the words out of my mouth. Like it's totally unwarranted. It's kind of ridiculous. It's the whole notion of like, this is why we can't have nice things, whatever fandom it's a part of, for NBA, this is why we can't have a nice dunk contest, is because we want to have good players. We want to have all-stars. We want to have marquee names in the dunk contest. And then when we get it, we just take a giant dump over it. Like there was no way, based off of the audience's reaction and obviously like Twitter and all of that, even if Jaylen Brown would have somehow won, I feel like the fans would have booed. They would have been angry. They would have been upset. They would have dogged on him. So it's unwarranted because he tried his best and it did so much damage because now all the players are like, this is why I don't do it. Look, if someone's going to ask LeBron, he's going to be like, yeah, that's exactly why I've never done an NBA all-star dunk contest. It's because it's a no-win situation. No matter how good my dunk is, no matter how good I perform, people are going to expect more. They're going to want more from me. It's just going to damage my brand. And so everyone that's been wanting to have these all-stars show up, and then if you win on you boot them, well, look forward to next year's dunk contest. You should be forced to watch it because no big names are going to be in it. I doubt Matt McClung's even going to go in it and try and win it 3 times in a row because he's not going to have much to gain from it. Like no one has much to gain. Like it's not something where you're going to have a chance to be successful. If you have a bad dunk, you miss your dunk, or you have a dud, that's just going to follow you around for. You'd be kind of labeled for that. So why do this if the fans are going to react this way? It was terrible, and it's a bummer. I'm really disappointed because I was really hopeful that Jaylen Brown would go. He'd have a good contest, or at least show that he cared, and the fans would get behind it. And next year we could get, we talked about this before, like a guy like Ja Morant. Can you imagine Ja Morant after being injured this year, his whole thing last season, trying to save his PR and has this awesome dunk contest? Well, he's not doing it now after everything that we saw this. He's not going to risk his PR that he's trying to fix, his image that he's trying to fix. He's not going to risk it for the dunk contest because of how the fans turned on Jaylen Brown. So it's disappointing to say the least.
Yeah, and like my biggest issue was like all Jaylen Brown's dunks had a meaning behind it. Like he did the first one, which is shout out to Dominique Wilkins because he's from Atlanta. Yep. Dominique Wilkins, biggest Hawks athlete there was. Then he did the one that was a tribute to D. Brown when he did the slam dunk contest. Then he did the one for, I think it was like a high school kid that he was like really close with who died. Did one as a tribute to him. Now the last one was probably a bit of a shot at some of his critics by putting the glove on his left hand and doing a left-handed dunk, since the joke is he doesn't have a left hand. I thought that was hilarious, but apparently it wasn't good enough for the fans and everything. And the lasting image was the image of Shaq looking disinterested after one of his dunks. And I was just like, Shaq is one of those who complains a lot about not having star quality in the tournament, and then that's what you do to him. George said I thought it was a tribute to Michael Jackson. I mean, I guess it could be interpreted that way. I just thought because he put the glove on his left hand, I immediately thought it was him showing up people who said he didn't have a left hand. Because after the dunk, he put his left hand up to show that's what he used. But I mean, we could say Michael Jackson as well. Dominique Wilkins stays down the street from me. That's actually kind of dope.
That's pretty rad.
Yeah, that's pretty dope. And then Anthony said Zion will win the contest season. And that's the thing. these big stars, if they went into the contest, they would automatically get like 50s just for dunking it because the crowd would just love to see them in it. Well, at least we thought that until Jaylen Brown got booed. But it's almost like the only way we'll probably get big names is if it's in their home arena and they feel like they need to do it. But even then, I don't even think that's going to be an incentive to do it necessarily. So I don't know how you necessarily fix this either. I heard somebody come up with the idea that what if you got like a couple of all stars to maybe go out and find like a street dunker, bring them in as like representation for them to expose, I guess, NBA fans to, dunkers that they may not have ever seen. I mean, I guess you could do it that way. Kind of seems like a lot of work for a dunk contest, but I don't understand. I don't know what they do at this point. Jaylen Brown tried to revive it. They booed him mercilessly. So I guess it's just going to be the G League dunk contest from now on.
The fans ruined it. Like, that's all it is. Like, we talked, for the All-Star game about how the players have kind of ruined it by not caring, by not playing defense, by not doing this, that, and the other. For the dunk contest, that's on us as the fans as a whole, as social media, all the sports broadcasters, everybody for not supporting Jaylen Brown. I'm not saying you have to fake it, but like, you don't have to boo the guy when he's going out there having pretty good dunks. Like, they weren't the best, but it's not worth booing for. So that, like, we ruined it. Like, all the other stars, like, it's our fault that the big names aren't going to be in it moving forward.
Yeah, people are acting like Jaylen Brown was Daryl Armstrong doing a reverse layup in the dunk contest. Like, come on, they were not bad dunks. Get over yourselves.
Right, that was my thing. It's like, it's not, they weren't terrible. It's not like he took 20 attempts to do them. Like, fans definitely were spoiled by Vince Carter and guys like that. But let's be real, there aren't that many Vince Carters running around the NBA. A guy who could just go out there, you give him a ball, and he'll put on a show for as long as you need him to. And also to think about it, Jaylen Brown, would you really classify him as a high flyer? Like, he's more of
a
an
power dunker.
Yeah. And I thought maybe they would respect a power dunker coming in, but it's like, no, they just want all the little tricks and all that kind of stuff. The Aaron Gordon stuff with the mascot, that's the kind of stuff they want. I mean, that's just not Jaylen Brown. Although, if you look at Jaylen Brown's dunk highlight video, it's like 9 minutes of him dunking on people. So maybe he should have just pulled out a bunch of guys, just run down the court and dunk on them. Maybe the fans would have cared about that a little bit more. I don't know what they're doing. Let's see. Yeah, so John did put in here LeBron needs to do it. As Jory said, he's pushing 40. Never going to happen, although he should have done it at least once when he was younger. But
I'll say, once he left Cleveland, you knew that was a wrap. First time. That's when it was his window to do it.
Yeah, so I mean, I do say that the whole social media aspect of it probably has guys stay away, because if you put a dud dunk out there, you're going to be all over social media in like 2 seconds, and then a lot of these guys have egos, are sensitive about their brand and all that, and they just can't handle it. So I even say shout out to Jaylen Brown just for that, because Jaylen Brown, after, he said, look, he might get made fun of for whatever, but like, he's comfortable in his skin to do it. So unless we get 4 guys who feel the same way as Jaylen Brown, this might have been the last opportunity for it.
Yep.
Let's see. John said he didn't do it because he he never thought he could win it. Then again, I say it's LeBron. He could have done the most basic dunks, and they probably would have given him 50s. Let's be honest about that.
I think LeBron, like any time 2010 before, absolutely could have won it.
Yeah. Especially when he does some of the stuff he does in the pregame line, where he does like dunk contest dunks and then doesn't do the event. I mean,
it's the ridicule. That's all it is. Jaylen Brown proved it. These players don't want to be ridiculed. They're like, and I can't blame them. It's like, Why should I put all this effort into these dunks? Why should I train my body? It's exhausting to do. It's a big event you have to train for. Why should I put all this effort into it if you're just going to take a dump on it? Like, cool, there's no reward for me to do this. The risks are way too high and the reward is so low because fans are just jerks. And like Jory said, Braun's he's just a smidge sensitive, just a little bit.
All right. Let's check out our next NBA story. So this one, look, some of you might think it's turned into like a Celtics theme. I promise you it's not. But Windhorse said something that just made me laugh a little bit. And he basically said because Tatum struggled in 2022 against the Warriors in the finals, it's going to hurt his MVP chances this season. I think according to Vegas, Tatum is has the fifth best odds to win MVP. And I know like Stephen A has said Tatum should be the favorite at this point. I've heard some other people say, who is it? Well, some other guys. I don't need to run through. You guys know who are the favorites.
Do you know who the favorites are on Vegas, Kyle? Do you know who's ahead of them? At least
I can
1 and 2.
tell you.
If I remember correctly, 1 is Jokic, 2 is SGA.
Okay. Well, I'm looking that up just to verify it, but like, do you think this makes any sense what Windhorse is talking about? Like, why that's even a thing is hilarious to me. But maybe I'm just too close to it as a Celtics fan. So let me know what you think. Sorry, you, Brett, on this one.
Like Brian Windhorse right now is just staring into my soul, but the answer is absolutely not. This makes absolutely no sense. Why are you judging Jason Tatum by what he did 2 years ago? Everybody has a bad finals. We gave LeBron MVP after he, crapped the bed in 2011. Like, we've seen people have bad finals and still win MVP after. This makes absolutely no sense. What is holding Jason Tatum back from being MVP this year? It's consistency. It really just did. For every, 11 of, 13 or 11 of 20 game, he's going to follow it up with 6 of 25 games. He should be the MVP this year if he could just be consistent offensively, and that's just what eluded him his entire career. It's unfortunate. I'm a huge Tatum fan, but he's got to work towards more efficient shots and start getting his efficiency in check, and once he starts consistently showing up every night, I have no doubt that Jason Tatum will be an MVP this year, or not this year, probably next year or the next couple of years. But he's got to work on that efficiency. He's got to be more consistent. It has nothing to do with what happened in 2022.
Right, so
yeah,
I did look up.
I was going to say,
I looked up the odds, and right now it's Jokic, SGA, Luka, Giannis, Tatum, Kawhi. That's your top 6.
Okay. I'll agree with Brett here. This doesn't make any sense to me. Look, I like Brian Windhorst. He's entertaining. I feel like ever since a couple of years ago when he made that the Utah Jazz Rudy Gobert trade, and he was like, think about Utah. Like he had this whole speech prepared for it. And I was really into it because I'm a Jazz fan and I was like super locked into it. I feel like he's trying to have these kind of moments where he can speak more things into existence. But he's wrong in the situation. And I'll give Windhorst credit. The MVP isn't always just the best player in the league. That's why Jordan only has 5. LeBron only has 4. It's a story. Like there's so many moments where they decide to craft a story around who wins the MVP. Like Russell Westbrook, the triple-double season was awesome, but it was the story for Oklahoma City and Kevin Durant leaving. So he's trying to pull the story in for this season's MVP race, and it just doesn't make any sense because it was 2 years ago. It was a completely different team. He was a completely different player. I will agree with Brett. Like if Tatum can get a little bit more efficient and a little bit more consistent, he'd be a lock to win the MVP. But I would have him probably at second. Like I think Jokic was probably the favorite, and then I'd put him second because Boston has been so good, and Tatum's the best player on the team. You could make an argument, maybe, and again, I don't watch a ton of Boston Celtics games, but my understanding is that Kristaps Porzingis has really been kind of the most important piece to that team. He really unlocks what Boston wants to do. That's probably the best way to put it. That KP really unlocks what Boston can do when they're at their peak. But So maybe you wouldn't want to lead it with that, Boston's only playing this good because they added KP, not because of Tatum. But it's bull crap. Like, let's just be real here. That was 2 years ago. He's a different player. He needs to work on his consistency, but Boston's the best team in the league, and he's the best player on that team. So he should be like a top 3. Like, if you're the best player on the best team, you should be in the MVP race every single year.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. Jory said that's true. The weird thing is, it's kind of funny to say that when your reigning MVP is Joel Embiid, who can't get out of the second round. So how does
Exactly.
he qualify to be an MVP? But a guy in Jason Tatum, who's been to countless conference finals, been to a finals, is being hindered this year.
It makes no
Windhorst
sense.
has his opinion.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
don't
Jake.
forget James. All the years we wanted James Harden to win it, and he finally got his, and all the playoff shortcomings that he had. We're not talking about James Harden flaming out in the playoffs when it was time for him to win the MVP. And great point with last year too with Joel Embiid. Like, Tatum's had way better postseason performances than either of those guys, and yet we're going to nitpick this one from 2 years ago. Doesn't make any sense. I'll let you finish your thought though.
No, I mean, all I was going to say was I get it that the Celtics have a lot of pressure on them to, I guess, finally win a title because they've been so close so many years. They have such a young core that eventually they have to pay it off with a win in June in the summer and actually raise banner 18. And I know Tatum was asked about it, and he basically said, like, everybody's entitled to their opinion, whatever their criteria is their criteria. So he played into it a little bit, but I think he realized that if he were to win, it would definitely raise his status within the league. I mean, as a Celtics fan, I love hearing that because I would love to see them win it, not only for him, but Jaylen Brown as well, who we just talked about. Because Jaylen Brown caught a lot of hate for his contract, even though we all know this upcoming offseason, you'll probably have like 4 or 5 guys signed for more than that. Like, that's just the way it's going to go. It's all about timing in terms of free agency. But, yeah, I don't know. Look, Windhorst can say what he wants. I just thought it was hilarious when he actually said it, that he really believed what he was saying. And we'll see. We'll see who. Yeah, go ahead, Brett.
I'll say when it comes to Tatum and his MVP odds this year, the other thing that hurts him too, and almost hurts any Celtic this year, is how good the team actually is. Mm-hmm. Like, anytime a starter sits, they still play extremely well. And to illustrate that, right here I have every single Celtics off numbers, which is how good the team performs when they're off the court. When Tatum's on, they're beating opponents by 11 points. They're a plus 11. When he's off, they're still a plus 8. When Jaylen Brown's on the court, they're a plus 6. When he's off the court, they're a plus 17. This is just an insanely deep team that I get with the best player. You want him in the MVP race, but this team is playing so well and is so deep. It's almost actually hurting him because you look at his off numbers, but look how good this team is even with him on the bench. Is this guy really the MVP? Are you sure it's not, Porzingis always stepping up in the clutch, or, Drew always locking down the best defender? I think there's just so many factors working against him, even on his own team, and that's not to take away from Tatum. It's just, unfortunately for his MVP odds, Boston built this team stupid well.
Yep, that's a great point there. And if Windhorst were to say that, I don't think we'd have as much of a difference. Like, look, this team is just stacked. They're super good. Like, this team's not as, stupid talented as like the 17 Warriors, but people didn't want to vote for Durant or for Curry for MVP because they're like, I can't vote for that guy because there's just too much talent on that team.
Right.
If we want to go that way, sure. Again, MVP is always about a story. What story do we want to create? And it feels like this year the story really hasn't come together yet. There really isn't a good story that the voters can get behind. And I just think he's trying to make one up. I'm just trying to create a narrative that people can kind of start from, because that's how all these other people get their MVPs. Otherwise, it would be just like Jordan, LeBron, Kobe, Shaq. It would be just be those guys and not these other guys that have won it.
And I will say from John here, where we put Jokic, SGA, Giannis, Luka Tatum, Kawhi, Brunson, top 6. Because I got mine from FanDuel, but that's probably a different listing. Brunson could be a story because New York, the Knicks haven't been all that relevant the past few years. Like if the Knicks end up as a top 2, 3 seed in the East, he could jump in this list pretty easily. I mean, like Kawhi,
I could
maybe
see
that's
Kawhi
kind of
being
the
this
same
story.
thing. Yeah, especially with it being the Clippers and then everything like that. I definitely would get that, but we'll see how it goes in the second half of the sequel, the unofficial second half, because most of these teams have played like 50 something games already.
Yep.
Uh,
No, Kawhi could
but
definitely be there
yeah,
where
go ahead.
his story's like, hey, look what happened. Look how good I am. Look how good my team is when I play the 65 required games. Like you all get on me for game management. Fine. Screw you guys. Let me show you how good I can be. That could be the story that the media creates. Like, look how good he is when he's healthy. I could see
Yeah.
that being a story that takes off.
I mean, and this is another question I just thought about, kind of going along the storyline. What do you think will be the biggest storyline in the NBA over now the sprint towards the end of the regular season?
I think the biggest story is going to be about the kind of what happens to Milwaukee and what happens for the Warriors. I think those are going to be the two biggest stories. Milwaukee, again, we said they just come off one of the toughest stretches they've had, but they've been playing very poorly. And the Warriors have been playing very, they've won a lot of games, but maybe a weaker schedule. They're two big, big players that are involved. They're really popular teams. I think those are going to be the big stories we watch is what's going to happen with Milwaukee. Or was it the right move to bring in Doc Rivers? Was it the right move to fire their coach? I think that's going to be the real thing to watch. Is this team going to implode and is Giannis going to want out, or are they going to figure things out and recover in time for the playoffs? And then obviously whatever happens with Golden State, if they're able to have some magic and become a really, feisty, eight or playing team that no one wants to play in the first round.
Okay. Brett, what do you think is going to be the biggest storyline of the second half?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be Milwaukee, and I don't think it's going to be all that close either. I think everybody's just too invested. The return of the Doc, and we have Giannis now. He's been more vocal lately, so I think the big story is going to be, can Milwaukee pull it together in the second half of the year? Or is this whole thing going to blow up in their face and completely unravel?
John said, biggest story would be with the firing of their head coach if the Nets turn things around and make the playoffs and make a deep run. Oh.
Spoiler alert, the Brooklyn Nets will not make a deep playoff run.
Yeah.
That team is devoid of any real playmaking.
Yeah, the Nets are a complete mess right now. I mean, I think it's going to be a post All-Star break of several storylines, but I do think the biggest one might be in terms of the Sixers.
That's a good one.
What the timeline is with Embiid, where are they in the standings once he comes back? If they are a playing team, will he be able to get them into the top 6? I don't know. Will he come back and not look ready, and then Philly has a big decision to make on whether to shut him down or let him play through it, especially for a guy who's had so many injuries to his lower body. I think that's going to be interesting. And they brought in Buddy Hield during the trade deadline. How does he look with the team and everything like that? But there's definitely plenty of storylines out there in the NBA. It's going to be an interesting finish to the season for sure. I mean, we could talk about John's thing really quickly. Were you surprised by the firing of Jacques Vaughn?
I know I was caught off guard, but as soon as I saw the report that he built the offense around Ben Simmons, and I was like, "Oh, justified. Have a great day, Jacques." But in all reality, yeah, I was a little surprised at first. This is the Brooklyn Nets team that, let's face it, they're not very good. You can say they made the playoffs last year, but they made the playoffs on the back of the start of KD and Kyrie because they had a losing record in the second half of the year. They weren't good. They came in this year with obvious glaring issues that for a playmaker, they don't have any real passers on this team. They had Ben Simmons, but we all know that you can't count on him anymore.
Yep.
Cam Thomas isn't a playmaker. He playmakes for one person himself. Mikal Bridges isn't a passer. Cam Johnson is a fine secondary passer, but he's not a primary playmaker. So this is just a team at the end of the day that is filled with holes, and I don't know what they expected Jacques to really do with this team. So I think the firing is it's a little unwarranted because there's not really anywhere to go for this team.
Yeah, I'll agree with Brett. It caught me off guard. I've always liked Jacques Vaughn as a coach. I think he coached in Orlando for a little bit, and he felt like he did pretty well there. Seems like he gets a pretty good respect from his players. I was surprised. Look, Brooklyn's a mess. They've been a mess since the whole they had Kyrie, Durant, and James Harden, and how everything exited. This team's just a mess. They don't know what they're doing. They don't have a good roster. None of that falls on Jacques Vaughn. Just because you're losing doesn't mean you need to fire a coach. Like in this kind of a situation, you need continuity. You need to create a culture that you can be sustainable. You can prove to other people that you're not going to be turning over coaches, turning over play styles, things like that. Brett, you make a good point that if you're going to build your offense around Ben Simmons, it's probably not a very good coaching point to put on your resume necessarily. But I was surprised because at this point, Brooklyn has nothing to gain from it. Like when you fire your coach, very rarely, unless you have superstars on your team, very rarely does it lead to success. And it's just probably going to make things worse. And I don't see how Brooklyn can recover from this in any quick way. So finding a coach that's going to want to go into this situation is going to be tough as well.
Yeah. I was surprised as well. I know a lot of people are bringing up the 50-point loss to the Celtics as, I guess, the final nail in the coffin for Jacques Vaughn, but kind of like we said, you're basing your team around Mikal Bridges being a legit number one. Maybe he becomes that. He's definitely not that right now. So I don't know what the expectations were for Jacques Vaughn. Seemingly probably way out there that they fired him at this point. Like, I get it if you let him run out the season, if they make the playoffs or not, whatever, they get eliminated, you fire him because maybe you have a different coach in mind. I get that. But at this point, it's like, what was the point? Like, I don't know. I don't know. The NBA is weird this season. Like, maybe it's just a greater thing. Like, our team's just being way too impatient with some of these decisions. Now, Milwaukee obviously is the situation that people will look at first because of Adrian Griffin, but that was kind of a clash between players, play style. I guess that one you could see the reason behind it. With this one, it's a team with no talent that's not winning.
Yep.
I don't understand what else you're expecting. So I don't get this one at all. George said, considering he wanted to run the team through Ben unavailable Simmons, not surprised. Hey, Ben will show up once every 2 months for a game or two. Like, what else you want from him?
Hey, don't forget those
games.
Those pregame dunk contests, those things. Hey, he'll get up for that, man. Hey, get your pictures ready. I'm going to do a dunk here in the warm-up line. He'll show up for that.
Don't forget right before everything, he's got to put his post out on Instagram how he's never felt better. This is the best he's felt since his rookie season.
Yeah. I hope that does not happen again this offseason. Besides, just said, thanks for putting J-Rod on the thumbnail. You're more than welcome. Shout out to your Mariners. John, do you think Detroit will have more wins than Washington? Detroit, in my opinion, looks way better. Not saying much, but Wizards look lost. I mean, that's definitely a question we can tackle here. Brett, you want to take? Oh, Jake, go ahead, take a first stab at it.
I was just going to say and see what the win totals are for each team. Let's see here real quick.
So 1 game difference.
Really? I actually did not know it was only a 1 game
they're
difference.
A little stronger. 1 game?
Mm-hmm. Pistons have 8, Wizards are at 9.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the Anthony, you are absolutely correct on that one. I
Not a
do
fan of
think
the
that
pool party.
the Pistons will end up with more wins than the Wizards. I think that Detroit management was actually smart and traded away every single piece that they didn't want Monty to use anymore, and released. They released Killian, who got too much playing time. Isaiah Livers and Marvin Bagley got way too much playing time, so they shipped them out. I think that was the best thing that they could do, is just get rid of a bunch of these excess pieces that Monty just fell in love with. So, and let's be real, as long as the Wizards are trying to run and play offense through Jordan Poole, they're not going anywhere. So I think the Pistons will continue to improve, and they will end up with a slightly better record than the Wizards.
I mean, I feel like if you look at their rosters,
Yeah.
the Pistons probably have somewhat of a brighter future because they are so young. Washington, I mean, you have Kyle Kuzma, you have Jordan Poole, you have Tyus Jones, and then a lot of, I don't know, unknown pieces after that. It's almost like Washington's trying to play two different styles here. They don't want it to be completely a rebuild, but they're trying to like retool it, but they're retooling it based off of a Jordan Poole, who we saw in Golden State towards the end of his tenure there. Pretty undisciplined offensively, and defensively, good luck with what you get from him defensively. Don't you forget about no, yeah. I definitely haven't forgotten about him. He's a guy that if you feel like Washington was probably doing things correctly, they would probably focus on Denny and then kind of branch out from there. But now Denny's going to be stuck behind Kuzma and Poole in terms of opportunities to score and everything like that. I don't know what Washington's doing. Detroit, you could say maybe there's a glimmer of hope for them for the future, especially like you said, Brett. Killian Hayes isn't there anymore. We don't have to look at the box score and see that Killian Hayes played 30-something minutes when he has the talent to probably play 5 if he's lucky. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think the Pistons actually end up with a better record than the Wizards. As crazy as that may sound.
I think your biggest difference between the two is the Pistons actually have pieces to build around in the future, and the Wizards are just hopelessly lost. Wizards, Denny, all right, who else are you really building around? Kyle Kuzma's already 27, 28. He was an older prospect coming into the league. You're not building around Jordan Poole. You already shipped out Daniel Gafford. While the Pistons, you at least have Cunningham, Ivy, and Duran. So I think that's huge that the Pistons actually have pieces that you look and go, okay, I can do some with that.
Yep. Yeah, Washington at this point is, they started their full-on tear-down rebuild this season. This is their first year where they're like, okay, we're going to be bad. We're bringing some players to meet the salary cap, but our intention is to build through the draft. And Detroit's already been building through the draft for a couple of years, so it just makes sense that Detroit should be further along because they have pieces that you like. And Washington, besides Denny, no one out there is you're getting excited about, especially if you're a young team that's trying to get better. Like Kuzma's a good player. He's really valuable. But like you said, he's 27, 28. He's the best he's ever been. He's not going to get much better than this. And he's not going to elevate a young team in this way. And then Jordan Poole is just there to give Washington some offense and maybe bring in some fans that watch him, score some points, because other than that, he's pretty unforgettable in any other aspect of his offensive game.
And Jordan Poole does it for the ladies in the front row. That's who he's showing out for. Georgia put free Tyus. How did nobody trade for that guy? That's what I'm wondering.
Yep. My guess is maybe there wasn't any good offers. That maybe Washington valued him and said, hey, we want at least 2 first-round draft picks or a first and a bunch of seconds, and no one was willing to offer a package that was going to be worth it.
Who ain't doing anything else? A pretty girl is sitting out there, so I guess none have been showing up to Washington games apparently.
Hey, they better find some.
I think I feel like the realistic answer with Tyus is they probably did get offers, but I feel like it goes back to the Wizards having absolutely no clue what they want to do, just held on to him. They almost kind of remind me of the Bulls, who get offers for guys like Caruso and all these win now players, but they want to hold on to them for a playoff push. The Wizards give me the same exact vibe because they could have moved on some of these guys. They moved on from Gafford, but then they kept ties. So it's almost like they can't figure out if they want to try to rebuild and win next year or just start rebuilding for the future.
Yeah, they're definitely operating like a team that if they made the play-in, they would call it a success. Which, hey, if that's where your bar is set, more power to you. All right, so I feel like that was good NBA talk. I guess we can go ahead and get into some NFL because yes, the season's over with, but here on the Big Three, we don't let the NFL die. We're gonna keep talking about it. So, Mahomes, we know, won his third Super Bowl. A lot of people like to put him in the GOAT conversation. We talked about where would he fit all time at this point. So we're just going to go past that and look down the line and see what would you need to see from Patrick Mahomes at this point before you put him in the GOAT conversation with Tom Brady. In terms of how many MVPs does he need to win? I guess how many more Super Bowls does he need? Does he need 7? How close does he have to come to it? How long does his career have to be? Like, what are your criteria for Mahomes to actually be in the neighborhood of Tom Brady?
I'll go first on this one. So for me, we talked last week, just for people that may not have noticed, I had Mahomes third on the all-time QB list. I think he definitely fits into most people's Mount Rushmore, which is, your top 4 players. For me, when I'm looking at Patrick Mahomes, I say that for him to be able to surpass Brady, he needs 5 Super Bowl wins is the goal. If he doesn't, I don't think he necessarily needs 7, but if he gets to 5 rings, at least 4 Super Bowl MVPs, and probably I'd say at least 2 more MVPs, 1 or 2 more MVPs. I don't think he needs like 3, but if he can get to 3 or 4 total MVPs, and then the time that comes with all those counting stats, I think that's when the discussion can happen. Because we have to remember, John said in the chat 5 Super Bowl wins in 10 years. Brady went a long time between those 2 runs. They had those first 3 before, and then he had those last 3 with those Super Bowl losses to the Giants in between. It doesn't matter if he can go years and years and still have, if his post career does it, then sure. But if he's the best player on 2 more Super Bowl championship teams, he gets 1 more MVP. He gets the Pro Bowls. He gets the counting stats for yards, completions, touchdowns. He gets, the All-Pro, maybe 1 or 2 more first-team All-Pros. Then we can have the decision. Because look, Tom Brady's the GOAT. Right now, it's going to take a lot to overcome that. But he was, not always the biggest driving force for every Super Bowl win. But he made sure and went ahead and took advantage when the moment mattered the most. Mahomes has been, for most years, the biggest driving point every year. You could say this year maybe the defense was the most important part, but his play has always been the number one reason why they've won. So I'd say get 2 more Super Bowl wins, 1 more MVP bare minimum, and all the counting stats, and then the discussion is going to be legit. And I think you can make the argument he would pass Brady at that point, simply because he does things that we've never seen before. He strikes fear into every other opponent. And, again, this is kind of revisionist history when we say Brady's the GOAT, but there were a lot of years in the early 2000s where people say, well, Brady's the winner, but Peyton Manning's actually the GOAT. Peyton Manning's the guy you would want to build your franchise around. He just has a bad defense or bad coaching, what have you. But Manning's the better quarterback. Time has kind of told us that Brady's the better one. Who is right now in Mahomes' class currently in the NFL? Like, who's his contemporary? It's tough. Like, if you see, we all agree Mahomes is number 1. Who's the second best quarterback in the league? Joe Burrow is kind of the guy that stands out because he's beaten Mahomes the most of all the quarterbacks that are there. The gap between Patrick Mahomes and whoever's number 2 is greater than like the gap between number 2 and number 7 if we're going for the list. Like, he's clearly defined himself as the best person. And if he can maintain being the best quarterback in the league on top of some of those other stats, he'll be the GOAT in my opinion.
Okay. Brett,
Yeah, I agree. I
what does
like the number
Mahomes need to
5.
do?
I think if he gets to 5 Super Bowls, 4 MVPs, I think that's good enough for me. The thing with Patrick Mahomes, right, is he's immensely more talented than Tom Brady. And people are going to think I'm knocking Tom Brady. He has more rate. I think Tom Brady's one of the smartest players to play the game. He always knew what the defense was doing, and he was always going to do whatever it takes to win. Just Patrick Mahomes, he's much more mobile. He can make throws that Brady could only dream of. These plays that he's making. So I just think if we're comparing talent, I think Patrick Mahomes blows him out of the water to such an extent that if he gets, within a couple, like anywhere near those, Tom Brady numbers, if he gets to, 5 Super Bowls and 4 MVPs, it's going to be hard to make a discussion to keep him out of number 1, honestly.
Yeah. John said can't always use the ring statement, and I'm a Pats fan. I mean, yes, I definitely agree with that. I don't think he needs to win like 7 or 8 because, one, that's crazy to expect Patrick Mahomes to do that. I agree. I think 5 is that number. Like if he gets to 5, he's allowed to move into the subdivision with Tom Brady. And I think who was it? John also put that he won't play after his 14th year. So do you think the longevity of Mahomes' career would factor in any way? Or do you think it's strictly hardware in terms of the MVPs and the Super Bowl titles? So like if he only plays, as John puts, 14 years while Brady played 21, will that factor in any way to you?
Not to me, but I could see for the masses that would make Brady the clear cut. Like, let's say he only plays 14 seasons. He gets 5 rings, 4 MVPs. Let's say he goes nuts, goes 5 times Super Bowl MVP. Like he just wins every single MVP award for the Super Bowls. A lot of people will say, well, Brady has 2 more rings and Brady's going to have way more of the counting stats. He's going to have more touchdowns, more yards, more completions, all of that. And for some people, that's going to stand out. But I don't see why Mahomes wouldn't want to play more than 4. Like why you'd only want to play 14 years, because he's competitive and he knows that like he's chasing Brady. He knows the company that he's in. He knows that he's just a few counting stats away from passing Montana as the for sure number 2 of all time, and he wants to pass Brady. He's mentioned before that him losing to Tampa Bay in the Super Bowl keeps him up, and he thinks about it every single day and how much that loss stings with them. So I don't know if he would even retire after 14 seasons, but for me, I wouldn't. If he retired and had those numbers, I would make the argument because eye test does matter. But to the masses, I think a lot of people would look at the counting stats that Brady has, which are ridiculous, and keep that in Brady's favor.
Yeah, John put his body won't allow him. I mean, maybe, but we'll have to see. I mean, obviously, not everybody was Brady crazy in terms of the restrictions he had in terms of his diet and everything like that. So I guess it might be difficult to expect another quarterback to play 21 seasons, but with the rules and everything, why not?
Hey, he may come up with MH15 and just go with this new crazy regimen to rival TB12. Doesn't roll off the tongue quite as good as TB12, but don't be surprised if he does it, because he's going to have the money to go for that. And John says the most dual quarterbacks don't last. Well, Mahomes only runs when he needs to, and for the most part, he only takes tackles when it's in the postseason. Like they don't run QB sneaks. They haven't run a QB up until the Super Bowl. They didn't run a QB sneak for like 2 years because he got hurt on one QB sneak. Like they're aware of his body, they're aware of how he can get hurt, and they want to protect him because he's the best player currently in the league. So I think he'll find a way to make his body last, and probably will happen. His game will change and he'll become more of a pocket passer. It may not be as effective, but it'll still be really good.
All right. Yeah, I mean, like John's dual quarterbacks, I don't really view Mahomes as a dual quarterback. When I think dual threat, you think of Lamar, obviously, and guys like that. One more big hit to that right knee that don't have a kneecap. Doctor said he won't be the same again. Well, once again, there's a way to protect that. You don't design runs for him. So, I mean, there's definitely ways around it.
I'll say
But
Patrick
I guess
Mahomes,
go ahead.
I'll say his mobility almost reminds me of like how guys like Tom Brady and prime Aaron Rodgers or like Big Ben would play it. They would run when they needed to. Like if there's wide open grass, they're going to pick up the first and then just get down right away so they don't take that big hit. So he's mobile, but I wouldn't view him as like a mobile quarterback. Like he's mobile enough to move, but it's not like they're designing runs for him like he's Lamar Jackson or Justin Fields. I think if it comes to Patrick Mahomes, if he only plays 14 seasons and puts up those stats, I think it'll just come down to what you value. Some people value the counting stats and the longevity. They'll say that Tom Brady's the GOAT. Some people value peak, and I think peak Patrick Mahomes is better than what peak Brady brought to the table. So at the end of the day, it's going to come down to who you talk to and what you value.
John said Brady ran when? Always thought he was skipping with that blazing speed. Hey, he juked out Brian Urlacher. All right, give the man some respect.
He did.
That was kind of funny when he did that.
It did. Brett makes a great point there. I think Aaron Rodgers is a good point where Aaron Rodgers, he's older. He's in his 40s. He's playing. He's had a bunch of injuries, not just Achilles, but before that, he'd have years where he'd get hurt, and he just finds a way to make his body work and to keep playing. Drew Brees played a long number of years with a really bad shoulder injury that almost ended his career. Like players can find ways, competitive guys find ways to stay on the field and take care of their body. And like Big Ben played a good number of years, and I don't think anybody's going to say that Big Ben took care of his body and was a huge off-season workout guy. And he played, a huge number of years and put up really good counting stats. So to just assume that he's going to get hurt is just, anybody can get hurt. Like a guy can fall into someone's knee like they did for Brady the year after they went undefeated in that first game. But what happened after that? He never got hurt. Big Ben's not 300 pounds and 6'9". You're like a WWE ring announcer, like exaggerating how big and tall someone is. Come on, man. Come on, John.
I mean, like Big Ben at the end of his career, like he was a huge guy, and he could barely move out there. So yeah, maybe 300 pounds is a bit of an exaggeration, but I mean, not that far off, right?
Say Big Ben's
Big Ben was definitely a big guy. He was 6'7", Jory said.
Yeah, I'll say Big Ben's throwing arm retired about 3 years before he finally did.
That's also true. All right. John actually once again did the whole script thing because he put in here this question. Where is it? There we go. What if he gets a three-peat? And my literal next question was, this is our way too early prediction for next year. Which one of these is more likely to happen? The Chiefs three-peat, the Niners figure it out and win a title finally, the Cowboys actually win a playoff game, or the Ravens make a Super Bowl appearance? Which one is more likely to happen next season?
I'll let Brett go first on this one. I went first on the last one. Don't want to talk over you.
I think that's easy. I think it's Patrick Mahomes. I think it's a Patrick Mahomes three-peat. Feels like it's more likely than any of these.
Don't bet against Mahomes.
We know for a fact that Dallas isn't going to get it done. It's going to be their year again for almost it's like a 30th anniversary at this point from '96. It's almost 2026. It's been their year since that Super Bowl. We know the Ravens, they're going to come up to the big game, and then all of a sudden, they're going to have to try to show us that Lamar can throw the football. These are just three teams that find a way to choke when it matters most. We all know what Kyle Shanahan does in the big games. The only guy who has shown I can trust when it comes to a big game is Patty. So I think this one's actually really simple. Give me Patrick Mahomes three-peating before any one of these other three happens.
Okay.
I'm going to agree with Brett on this one. And also, for reading the script, if they three-peat, then this is like the biggest dynasty where you have 3 in a row, and then that would be 4 total. Like that's something that has never happened in the NFL. So tons of pressure that's there. Uh, it's the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, and the Chiefs. If they sign Chris Jones, if they re-sign him, bring him back, he's the best
Mhm.
player in that defense. They do that. They prove that they can win with a subpar offense, quote unquote subpar offense and a down year. Like this defense is really good. They're really young. Like all these good players they've got from the Tyreek trade have been impact players on the defensive end. They're gonna bring in some players that are going to be wanting to go ring chasing. They're going to want to be able to take a discount to play with Mahomes to get maybe better stats. They can find ways to revamp the receiver core. I think that's the best one. I'll tell you right now, the Ravens is the one that's the least likely to happen. Is Baltimore making it to the Super Bowl? Because this was their, we mentioned it before, this was their year to make the Super Bowl. The Buffalo Bills were having a down year. Their defense was banged up. The Cincinnati Bengals with Joe Burrow's injury, they're out. Pittsburgh can't find a quarterback. The Chiefs, despite their great defense, was considered a down year. They have all this talent on offense, all this talent on defense, all these all pros everywhere, and they beat the Texans, who overachieved, greatly based off of where they should have been this year. That was their only playoff win. Baltimore, that's not happening. I could see Dallas winning one playoff game. Like they win their division, they're like the 3 seed, and they get one playoff win. Maybe they're the 4 seed and uh, they play like some bad wild card team. I don't know. I could see them winning it, but if I'm making a bet here, it's on Kansas City because you just don't bet against Mahomes. That defense is super good, and I think they're going to find ways to bring the key players back. And it's just at this point, you just don't bet against him. He's just the best player in the league.
I mean, I think the Chiefs is the easiest answer here.
It's a three-peat. That can't be an easy answer. It's a
I
three-peat,
mean,
though.
but I feel like we're when we're looking at the AFC, who is going to step up and challenge Kansas City? I think the biggest hope is probably the Bengals because at least we know Burrow has stared at the Chiefs and has actually performed. I don't think if the Ravens had to face them again next year, they probably do
Nope.
the same thing they did this year. The Bills have a lot of issues that they got to work out. I mean, unless you believe like Harbaugh um, with the Chargers, he completely fixes everything there. So it might be somewhat easy depending on how the Chiefs look next year. They probably should be back in the conversation. Part of me thinks the Niners, because I've had this weird thing where I feel like the Niners either win it next year or they turn into this generation's Bills and make it back there like 4 years in a row and just find ways to lose 4 years in a row. So because of that, I'll just be the different one here and I'll say the 49ers getting over the hump is the most likely one, with the Chiefs one as, number 2. But I definitely agree. The Ravens one, I threw this on here just so I could take a shot at Baltimore.
I love it.
They ain't
I
going to
love
no
it.
Super Bowl. They're not going. Come on.
I really wanted to say the 49ers. I really did, but Kyle Shanahan has given me zero reason to trust him at this point with his coaching in big games.
That's
So,
definitely
yeah,
valid.
I really went between them and the 49ers. And in fact, I think you ranked them in the perfect order of most likely to least likely to happen. But yeah, I wanted to do the 49ers so bad, but I can't trust Kyle Shanahan. I just cannot bring myself to do it.
Nope. There's so many YouTube videos you can watch of the Chiefs making adjustments in the Super Bowl and the 49ers not, where they're just
Mhm.
Steve Spagnuolo, Andy Reid just outcoached everything that Kyle Shanahan did, coach circles around him, that it's really hard to just trust that this team's going to come back and do it. They have a lot of salary, issues they have to deal with.
Mhm.
What are they going to do with Brandon Ayuk? And he's a huge part of their offense. And also, the Niners were fairly healthy. Like I know I think their nose tackle was hurt, but like Christian McCaffrey had another really healthy year after a bunch of
True.
injury plagued seasons in Carolina. Can we trust on that? Do we know Brock Purdy is going to be a guy that can keep doing what he's doing? Debo, how long is it before he gets hurt? Things like that. It's just this was their year to do it, and I don't think they have it in them to win a tightly contested game. The only way they can win the Super Bowl is if they blow teams out, and it's really hard to blow the Chiefs out when they got Patrick Mahomes in that defense.
I mean, look, that's all valid. Shanahan definitely has still those demons of Super Bowls past where he's had 3 10-point leads, hasn't been able to win one. 49ers lost Greenlaw. You could tell momentum was slowly changing. Absolutely, because they had to change up their whole defense once Greenlaw went out. Yeah, that was definitely the turning point of that game. I mean, but if you had to be honest, before the Greenlaw injury, it kind of looked like the Niners were actually going to pull it off. And it probably wasn't even because of Shanahan, because the defense at that point was doing more than enough on their side of the ball, basically keeping the Chiefs to 3 points at that point.
Yep.
So it would have been hard for Shanahan to really screw that up if the defense kept playing the way that they did.
It was the punt return. That's what changed it.
Yeah.
Everything changed after that punt return turnover.
Yep.
It also feels like that it was just the team that was going to – I feel like that team was just going to give it away eventually. Team wasn't mentally in the right place. I said it on sideline to sideline, and I'll say it again here. When you're on the sideline saying Patrick Mahomes is just an average quarterback, you're not all there mentally. Your head's not in the right place. So I think this is a team that just wasn't mentally ready, and I think that they were done as soon as those words came out of their mouth because he's not. If you're game planning for an average quarterback, Mahomes is going to come back and kill you every time.
Punt return and the third quarter, they went away. Yes, the first 2 drives of the third quarter. Yep.
I'll just also add this
interception.
You got to get points after that one. Got to get points after. I'll add in here that when it was 10-3 at halftime, it felt like with the way the teams had played, it should have been 20-3, 17. Like the Niners should have been up way more than they did, despite the feel of the game was that they were the better team. They were winning, but they should have been winning by more, and that comes down to execution and coaching. You got to put these teams away when you should be winning big. You got to put these guys like Brady and Mahomes. You got to put them away, and they didn't do it, and it's that attention to detail that they're missing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. All right, I've seen enough of Lamar's sad face for this one. Let's go to the next one. Justin Fields. Now, I feel like this is like a yearly thing now. We're waiting to hear from the Bears what their decision is with Justin Fields. Obviously, the 2 options will be have the number 1 pick, you draft Caleb Williams, you trade Justin Fields, and you keep him moving. The second way to do it would be you keep Justin Fields, maybe you trade out of number 1, try to get Marvin Harrison Jr., and you keep him moving that way. John said Bears are stupid if they trade him. Well, the Bears are just dumb. That's probably what they're going to end up doing. But I want to hear from you guys. I guess what would you do, and what do you expect that the Bears are going to do with Justin Fields?
Brett, I'm going to let you take this one because I want to see you dunk all over the Bears. I want to see it.
First off, where's the Bears fan? Oh, Damien, where art thou, Damien? What I would do at this point is really simple. You kept Matt Eberflus, you keep Justin Fields, you trade the first pick, you get Marvin Harrison or Malik Neighbors, or maybe you draft a guard or a tackle to try to fortify that offensive line and go wide receiver with the 9th pick. I think the Bears are just dumb at this point if they draft Caleb Williams. Why? There's a saying, from Gene Wired. He's got a shirt out now about it, by the way. You marry the coach to the quarterback. What you're doing, if you get Caleb Williams, pairing him with Eberflus, who is not a great coach, he's probably going to get himself fired next year. And now he's already on the second head coach, second coordinator in 2 years. You're setting Caleb Williams up to fail. You are really lame ducking him here, and it's unfortunate. At the end of the day, Caleb Williams is going to need time. If people think that he's going to come in and wave some magic wand and fix the Bears' issues, he's a playmaker. He's an improviser, just like Justin Fields. He's going to come in. He's going to take hits. He's going to take sacks. He's going to hold on to the ball for too long. Are the fan base going to turn on him right away? I just think that you got to get a system in there that kind of simplifies the game for him to start. Get the ball out of his hands quickly. But more importantly, I think you needed to pair the coach, a new head coach and a new coordinator, with Caleb Williams. And now it feels like they're setting it up. So next year, guess what? Poor Caleb Williams, second coach, second OC already in 2 years.
I mean, great. Those are good points. I'm not going to argue too much. If I were the Bears, I would have fired Eberflus this offseason. I've not enjoyed what I've seen. I didn't like the hire in the first place when they brought him in to be the head coach. I didn't think it was a good fit. Didn't like what he brought. And obviously nothing I've seen from them has been very good. I think they should trade this pick. This pick has a ton of value. Normally, I would just say you take the quarterback. Like I live in the DMV, I have a ton of Washington fans in my area, and they're just saying, take the quarterback, the best quarterback that's available. Don't trade down. Don't try and be cute. Just take your quarterback. But in this situation, with Caleb Williams being as high, whether or not we think he's soft, he's not great, or whatever he is, he has a lot of value and a lot of perceived value in the league. You could get another haul. You could still get Marvin Harrison. You could get future draft picks, and you have to show some consistency here. You can't just go from quarterback to quarterback, coach to coach. You have to line them up. The saying that Brett mentioned is perfect. Marry the quarterback to the coach. That's what they need to do. They have Eberflus. They have Fields. They need to try and make it work. I think they're going to trade Justin Fields. The answer is, what do they think they do? I think they're going to trade him, and it sounds like Atlanta's the most likely destination where he goes. And that Atlanta Falcons team would then be actually pretty scary. So I don't want to see that happen as a Saints fan. I don't want to see them have any type of competency at quarterback. But for me, I would take advantage of everybody saying that Caleb Williams is this generational talent. Get a bunch of draft pieces. Get Marvin Harrison Jr., who's a top tier wide receiver prospect that we've ever seen. Because look, everybody said the same thing about Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence was regarded higher as a quarterback coming out of college, and he's not saying Trevor Lawrence is bad or anything, but he definitely hasn't lived up to the hype. Nothing's guaranteed. Just try and make things work with what you got, and you can't just be on this off cycle between quarterbacks and coaches.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Look, if I were the Bears, I'd keep Fields and kind of build off the way he finished the season. He finished the season playing really well.
He did.
And now to basically restart that with Caleb Williams coming in, we got to now sit there and deal with the bumps and bruises he's going to go through as a rookie quarterback. It's almost like, Fields took a step forward, and now they're taking 2 steps back, bringing in Caleb Williams. So that's probably what they're going to do. The pressure to take Caleb Williams is going to be too much for them to pass up on. And if Fields ends up in Atlanta, good luck to him. That's a division where he can probably do really well in. He's going to have Kyle Pitts, Drake London, a lot better than what he's leaving in Chicago.
I hate it. I hate it.
It makes sense. You were looking at a division where, let's say Atlanta comes back with Desmond Ridder. Yeah, the offense still has talent on it, but Ridder isn't going to take it to its highest potential. It'd make the division way more wide open. You put Fields there in Atlanta, you might as well say they wrapped it up already.
Yep.
John's asking, so since we're on the draft, should the Pats go after Baker in free agency and get a wide receiver? We know Baker has an arm and proven. If the Patriots get Baker Mayfield, I'm throwing a party. I'm all about Baker Mayfield right now. I don't know if you're going to get him.
You should try. No, you should try. Baker Mayfield.
Yes.
Baker Mayfield proved, it was interesting. Everything I've heard about Baker Mayfield is that after things ended badly in Cleveland, because remember, he played, he had the torn labrum, a bad injury to go through. He decided he was going to tough it out, and the fans turned on him, the media turned on him because he had a bad season. He goes to Carolina, they're a dumpster fire. It wasn't until he went to the Rams and Sean McVay said, "Hey, go be Baker. Go have fun." Once he kind of fixed in his head, because quarterback is just as much mental as it is physical. He went to Tampa Bay, and look, he wasn't all pro, but he proved that he was a good quarterback. You give him good play calling, you give him some good weapons, he can make things happen. I would go after him. I'd rather have Baker Mayfield than Derek Carr as my quarterback. Salaries, whatever the salaries are, I'd rather have Baker than Derek Carr. The thing is, I think he's going to stay in Tampa Bay. He seems like he knows he has good receivers. He loves Mike Evans. Like, who doesn't love Mike Evans as your wide receiver? They have some talent. It's a winnable division. You're living in Tampa. I think he's going to stay there. But yeah, if they have a chance to get him, New England should absolutely go for that. You get the third pick, you get Marvin Harrison, you bring in Baker Mayfield. That's a pretty good core to build around on top of that defense.
Yeah.
I think.
And go ahead, Brett.
I think that the answer for that's really simple. You draft a rookie. I think with Baker Mayfield, he gives you a nice floor, but he's not going to raise your ceiling. Is the issue?
Mm-hmm.
He had his best year. Yes, I don't think it's a coincidence that he has his best year with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I think he needs a certain level of talent around him, and I think he's able to elevate teams to an extent. Teams seem to feed off his energy, but I think that also has a limited shelf life. So I think that you want to get a quarterback who might give you a more who might start off worse than Baker. People might, really go at you, should have signed Baker. But I also think maybe get like a Drake May or McDaniels, because I think they give you a higher ceiling, and I think that's what the Patriots should be looking for right now. Not who's going to help them win right now. Who's a guy that's going to give them a ceiling that in the future, when they're ready, that'll get them over the top.
Yes. And my thing was if you bring in Baker Mayfield, I'm assuming you're drafting a young guy, and that way you're not rushing him into starting right away. Come get Malik Willis. Look, I'm looking at Baker as like a 1 year type of rental type of thing, just to get the young guy accustomed to the speed of the league. So if you did bring in Baker, now the number 3 pick, you have more options with it. I feel like and obviously free agency, I believe, comes after the draft anyway, but what they do with that third pick will kind of let us know maybe their plans for free agency. But there could be a situation where, let's say they're really high on Jaden Daniels, but he goes second. I don't necessarily want them to just take a quarterback at 3 just because they need one and then get a guy they're not necessarily in love with. So if they move down from 3, maybe take a wide receiver, I wouldn't be mad at that because it's going to be other ones other than Marvin Harrison as well. Even if you don't get him, you got Rome with a Dunze from Washington. You have a couple Malik Neighbors. Like, if you got any one of them, I'd be happy with it. So, I mean, look, I don't know. I feel like the more that's going on in New England in terms of what Mayo's building there with the coaching staff and everything, I'm actually excited to see what they do with the draft. Because I feel like if Belichick was still there, to be honest with you, I was not planning on a pick coming at number 3. Belichick was going to trade down. That's just what he does. Don't speak about my Chaos Mario like that. I mean, Pats will sign nothing but offense.
Good, they need
I mean, pretty much.
They need it.
Yeah, the defense is still pretty good. I know that they did release a couple of guys the other day, but they were Lawrence Guy, who's mid-30s, and Adrian Phillips, who's mid-30s. Like, you can replace those guys in the draft.
Say Matthew Slater retired. The Patriots are cooked anyway. We all know that.
Matthew Slater was such a great guy to have around. I mean, the fact that he was a gunner for all those years, I mean, more power to him. That's not necessarily a glamorous job.
Nope.
All right. So here we are. This is something that we used to do way back when we first kind of got started, have end episodes a little bit of fun. And since with the NFL season kind of being where it is, we have a little extra time. So I went ahead and designed this. So this is a name the team. I feel like this one might be a little easy because of the quarterback, but whatever. It's just to get us started back in the mode of a little bit of trivia. So the quarterback, you have the previous teams. The question mark just means that's the current team that they're on. So the running back was drafted. The wide receiver, Raiders, Cowboys, now to the team. Other wide receiver, Jets, and the tight end was drafted. I figured you were probably going to get this one right away. I mean, Brett, since you know it, Let's see if somebody in the chat will get it first.
It's
I mean, Jake, do
it's
you know it?
obvious, but I want to get some chat interaction. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
obvious. The quarterback gives it away, but
I know. I feel like the
It's,
quarterback always does.
it's funny. I didn't even
but it's
realize
a good
because of
warm
the
up.
I didn't even realize because of the quarterback at first. I looked at wide receiver, and that's what did it for me.
Oh, okay. Okay. Let's see
I
the
like
chat.
backtracked. I think receiver then went up to quarterback. I was like, oh, okay.
Okay, that's interesting. Because I was putting it together, I was like, I think the quarterback might be the one to give it away.
It's just easiest to know to follow the starting quarterbacks, anyways. Like that's always the easiest way to follow a team.
Okay, so Jory says she's confused. All right, so basically it's the quarterback played with the Ravens, then the Broncos, then the Jets, and is now at his current team. The running back was drafted by the team. The wide receiver went from the Raiders to the Cowboys to this team. The other wide receiver was drafted by the Jets, made it to this team, and then the tight end was drafted by this team. Hopefully that it cleared it up for you.
The goal is simple. You have to guess what team this is, judging
Yes.
by where the players were at each of their stops.
Good job, Jory.
I mean, for being confused, yes, the quarterback is
You
Joe
nailed it.
Flacco. So yes,
Yep, good
Anthony
job,
got
Anthony.
it. It's the Browns. Yeah. So the quarterback is Joe Flacco. The running back would be Nick Chubb or Jerome Ford. They were both, drafted. I did this based off of their last game, so I would have used Deshaun Watson, but Joe Flacco was the starting quarterback. The other wide receiver. So which wide receiver gave it away for you, Brett?
A wide receiver one. That's
The Raiders,
Amari Cooper
Cowboys,
with the Raiders and Cowboys.
and then
Yep,
the
Cooper.
second wide receiver would be Elijah Moore for the Jets and the Browns, and then the tight end is David Njoku. So yeah, Anthony said Browns. Jory said the Clowns. Freddie, yes, that's Flacco. That's Amari Cooper. Anthony Price, when I saw Raiders and Cowboys, immediately thought Cooper. Yeah. So yeah, this is something I will do for basically every week until football kind of kicks off again, because usually football takes a lot of our time, but it may not necessarily be an NFL team. I could do this with NBA. We'll just have a little fun, whether it's something like this or a trivia question, just to end the show with a little bit of fun like we used to. Obviously, this one was too easy, so I'll have to go into the bag and make it a little more difficult next week.
Really confused. Kyle, you got to pick. You got to do the Hornets and make the starting point guard Ish Smith, just so you can line up like 13 teams in the
Oh God.
point guard slot.
I mean, trust me, with the NBA, I could definitely make it tougher with the NBA with all the movement that goes on there. But like I said, I just want to start off a little simple so that the chat and everybody could kind of understand what I've been working on. So, I mean, hey, I appreciate that. We have few minutes here, so if you guys in chat want to throw out any questions, we'll definitely stick around for a little bit. But go ahead, Jake.
I like the game. It's super fun. It's easy and engaging for the audience. So props to you for that, Kyle. I have a question just for Brett while the chat kind of adds in any questions that they might. One of our big talking points last week was where do we have Mahomes on our all-time list. Kyle had him 5. I had him 3rd. Where do you have him? Just because that's a big talking point and you were, at the Bucks game. Where do you have him on your all-time QB list?
3.
Who do you have ahead of him?
Brady and Montana.
2? Same here. Yep, that was my list.
Freddie's on.
Freddie.
Why is LeBron the GOAT?
I mean,
the simple answer. Because he's not. There you go.
I can give you arguments why people think he's the GOAT, but I don't think anybody on this panel actually thinks he is the GOAT.
Yeah.
No, you can make an. It's like any like high school debate club. Like you can debate and find reasons that point to LeBron James being the GOAT and being a candidate. But is he the GOAT? No, for me, he's not. But he has a lot of things going for him. You could make an argument for his counting stats that are ridiculous, his impact on the game, his longevity, his MVPs. He's going to be in the 40,000, 10,000, 10,000 club, which is. Obviously, no one is in that club currently. All those things definitely point to his greatness. And I think one thing that could point to how great LeBron is some people look at LeBron's career and say that it didn't live up to expectation because he was supposed to be better than Jordan. And the dude has 4 rings, 4 MVPs, all-time leader in points, all the counting sets that are there. And for some people, it's just not good enough. So you could make the argument that like it was never going to happen. Like people weren't going to give up the throne for Jordan and that the expectations were too high. So those things definitely go in LeBron's favor. And I'm a big LeBron fan. I'll just be honest, like Freddie, it's hard to defend this question. The more your LeBron goes along, the more antics he has, the more flopping he has. It's makes it kind of tough. But the arguments are there that you can make. But for me, Jordan's the GOAT, and I don't want to make an argument that he's the GOAT when it's something I don't believe in. I'd feel like a fraud on those, cheesy shows you see on sports radio or sports media where they're just saying something to pop ratings.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you can make arguments too. Like I think 2013 LeBron he's probably just the most complete player that we've ever seen in NBA history. He also took down one of the greatest. He also took down a dynasty. He took down the Warriors in the middle of at the beginning of their run, and that works out. I think that's the best way to think about LeBron. It's just, what do you prefer, longevity, or do you prefer peak? Because I think Jordan had the better peak. He accomplished more in less time, but obviously LeBron has much better longevity than Jordan. So what do you really want? Do you want peak? Because then you're going to go Jordan. Do you want longevity? Then you're going to go LeBron. But I will say that 2013 LeBron is, I think, the greatest player that we've ever seen. He's the most complete.
I'll agree with Brett there. Before we get to Freddie's last question, that LeBron, that 2013 version of LeBron was there. The moments that he was there were terrifying. Like he was super complete. He was, you could say he was robbed of being defensive player of the year. He did everything. Like he could strike. People say now people don't fear LeBron James. That's kind of a trend on like, these interviews or whatever, when they bring like names like Jordan and Kobe. I'll just say this, and Kyle, you can back me up on this. That 2012 Eastern Conference Finals, Game 6 and Game 7, like he had Boston shook when he had that Eastern Conference game where he dropped like 45 points in Game 6 on the road and just ended that Celtics run that they had. Like he had those moments that were there, and he was absolutely complete. And he did beat a 73-9 team that would have been the best team of all time. But for me, I'm going to take Jordan. I have LeBron number 2, and I feel like with how great the NBA is, like it's not an insult to say LeBron James is the second best player of all time.
It absolutely isn't. I know some people take it as some slight to LeBron. I feel like if you have LeBron anywhere in your top like 3 or 4, like that's a lot of respect for a guy when you look at a lot of the greats who have come through this league. I look, for me, I don't think he's the GOAT. I'm not going to say he. Well, I probably would say that for me, I don't know if he would ever actually eclipse Jordan. And for me, a lot of it is because of the bouncing around with him. I've been one of those who thought like if he was in Cleveland and had this career in Cleveland, I probably would make a bigger argument for him. But the teaming up in Miami and then, going to LA, basically gutting the team of their youth just to get Anthony Davis and all that and everything that comes along with him, he just can't get to number 1 for me.
I think
and
there's the argument that he should have stayed in Cleveland. I think where that falls apart is really simple. Who's going to come join him in Cleveland? During his first tenure, all he got was a bunch of really washed stars. Who was the biggest stars he played with that first tenure? Shaq?
Shaq was washed.
Jameson? Like, it was just a bunch of washed vets that they had to trade for. It would almost mirror the career that kind of Giannis is having. They're going to have to overpay guys because nobody wants to come play in Milwaukee. It'd been the same thing. So in order for LeBron to truly achieve GOAT status and try to chase Jordan, I feel like he had to leave Cleveland. He had to go to Miami. He had to go LA, like he had to go to these places where guys are actually going to want to join him, and they didn't have to overpay for superstars. Look what they had to give up to get Kevin Love back. They had to give up like the guy who they picked out first overall, which wasn't too big. They had to give up the guy that they picked second overall.
One of the worst ones, Anthony Bennett.
Absolutely
terrible pick.
Like the point is, like if they would have picked like Damian Lillard, like imagine people would be screaming overpay. So if he stayed in Cleveland, I don't think it would have worked just because of the amount they'd have to overpay him.
But I also think if he stayed in Cleveland, probably the demand on rings would be a little lower for that very reason. Because I think people would say it'd probably be tougher. But I also think with the way the NBA is now, you might have had guys who would have eventually started going to Cleveland to play with him. I don't know. The NBA is
no one was going. That Cleveland that Cleveland roster that he had when he left was garbage. Like we saw what the team did the following season after he left. That team was complete trash. They had no hope, and it was just one player that left. So I think he had to leave Cleveland because it was a badly run organization. There's a reason they picked number one, and they were so bad for so many years, and LeBron kind of carried them for that. I think the thing that really hurt him was when they teamed up in Miami and the celebration they had where he was bringing talks of not one, not two, not three, not four. And I think that was the thing that really put the sour taste in everyone's mouth as far as that goes. But we can move on from LeBron. Like LeBron's funny. Great, but we could talk about someone else.
Interesting fact, though, real quick. Everybody does know that the number one pick that landed Kyrie didn't even come from Cleveland. It's because they traded Baron Davis to the Clippers for their unprotected first, which ended up, even though there's like zero chance it was the number one pick, just got lucky and happened to be the number one pick. Just a fun little NBA factoid about Kyrie coming to Cleveland.
Yeah, I definitely forgot about that, but yeah.
Yeah, because they had the fourth pick that year in the draft. I think they got like Deion Waiters, right? Is that who they ended up picking? Some random guy like that they got with the fourth pick that Cleveland actually owned. Like they had the 1 and the 4 in that year's draft, I think. But I could be wrong. That was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, number one. That was Tristan Thompson.
Oh well, he was impactful. He helped them win a title. They ended up overpaying him, but he played a factor in that championship run.
You know what's interesting too about
and he got popped for substance abuse. So performance enhancing. Sorry.
So Jake, you wanted to get off the NBA. I have an NFL question for you guys. Do you guys think the demand for paying wide receivers is going to start going down? Because we're starting to see Patrick Mahomes win with lesser guys. You see all the trend of not winning with these higher paid receivers. You see Jordan Love challenging the top team in the NFL with, guys who are just first and second year rookies. Do we think that maybe teams are going to start looking at that and being like, you know what? I don't need to go pay Justin Jefferson $30 million. I can go get 6 guys who will be willing to sacrifice and work as a team.
I do agree. It's a great question, Brett. I think there is going to be a market correction for wide receivers, and I think that has less to do with the fact that Mahomes is doing good without receivers, and Jordan Love went really well without key receivers. I think it has more to do with the fact that look how many good wide receivers are in the league. Like there's a lot of really good receivers. There's a lot of really good receivers coming up in the draft. And there's only so much money that's going to be available in free agency for these guys to spend that teams are going to be like, look, I want to pay $20 million for X, but I can't. Like I'm going to pay $8 million for a guy who's a little bit less than you, but is it worth that 12, the difference between the two players, is it worth $12 million? The answer to that is no. So I think it's a market correction more that has to do with the fact that the wide receiver room is just more talented, I think, than it's ever been in the history of the league.
I mean, each team's going to be different. Obviously, your quarterback position will probably dictate how you spend your money. So if you have a top-tier quarterback, I don't think it would make a lot of sense to then splurge on a wide receiver position when you're going to need offensive line. You're going to need defensive guys to definitely help you to win one, as we saw with the Chiefs. So, yeah, I do think the wide receiver market will probably go down slightly. I don't think it gets to like the running back or anything like that, because obviously wide receiver is still going to be more important than the running back. But I think John might be onto something where maybe it slides to tight end a little bit more, because we see a lot of these offenses are working more down the middle of the field. That's usually where your tight end works. So they probably become more important in your passing game. And especially if you're a team with a young quarterback, a young quarterback's best friend is a running game and a tight end. So yeah, I definitely think the wide receiver will slightly go down as well. That was a really good question.
Well, what's your answer to that, Brett? I'm curious, since we both gave ours. What's your opinion on the?
Oh, I absolutely think it will, and you kind of took my biggest talking point about that, Jake. I just think we're seeing such an influx of talent from the wide receiver room coming into the NFL that it's really not much of a difference between maybe getting like a Malik Neighbors or even some of the guys that are like Romo Odunes, like some of these guys, or paying like T. Higgins $20 million, or even a Justin Jefferson 30. Like I know that for someone like Jay Jettas, I brought him up. I think he's going to be worth the money. He's one of the most skilled guys in the NFL. But if I'm trying to build a championship team, is it really worth it to burn up that much cap to pay a wide receiver $30 million? I don't think so. So I do agree with you guys, and I do think that a market correction is coming for wide receivers.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, who needs Jay Jettis when you got Devontae Parker or Juju Smith-Schuster?
Oh, Kyle.
We signed wide receiver 1, Philip Dorsett.
Yeah, Philip Dorsett. Yeah.
There you go.
Got a couple of big catches with Tom Brady.
The wide receiver room is going to get corrected. Like the truly elite receivers, like Jefferson's going to get paid the money, and it's going to be worth it. It's just going to be like, oh, I'm the next. It's not going to turn into like the quarterbacks where it's like I'm the next best receiver that's due for the extension. You have to match me to Jefferson. Teams are going to be like, no, you're not as good as Jefferson. It's not going to be like quarterbacks where it's just when your time's up, you have to set the market. It's not going to be that way for receivers. There's too much talent in that room, and you can't pay a wide receiver $30 million unless he's truly that top tier. And I think there's like 2 or 3 receivers that probably make that list that were worth that kind of a price tag.
Plus, that $30 million is only valuable based on the guy who's throwing him the ball. So,
yep.
If it makes sense to have a $30 million wide receiver, then you probably have a
rookie quarterback
you're not paying a lot for, probably on his rookie deal, who's just kind of exceeded his deal. And there's like a little bit of wiggle room there for like a year or two before you need to pay him. And yeah, that's the only way it's probably going to work. But I mean, we can probably go ahead and get up out of here because a few minutes early. But great show. I mean, Jake, you have anything to say before we get out of here?
No, just great show for appreciate the audience always including in here. We just because football's not over doesn't mean we're not going to have fun things to talk about or have plenty of things planned for to scratch that NFL itch, because I'm definitely, it's been 1 week, but I'm already missing the NFL. No offense to the spring football, it's just not going to quite do it for me. But yeah, great show and looking forward to next week.
I mean, you don't want to talk AJ McCarron, UFL MVP. You don't want to talk anything like that?
I like AJ McCarron, but come on, like we have...
Chat, drop your top 5 AJ McCarron moments.
Oh boy!
All right, Brett, you got anything before we get out of here?
Yeah, as much as I am a Chicago, Bears hater, I do hope that Justin Fields is able to get out of there and go be the quarterback that he deserves to be. He doesn't deserve to be with the dysfunctional dumpster fire that is Chicago. This is a franchise that in 100 years they haven't found one franchise quarterback. Come on now. And no, Jim McMahon is not a franchise quarterback, or Jay Cutler. I'm sorry. But no, I think that Justin Fields needs to get out of Chicago, get out as quickly as you can. And I can't wait to see him thrive, hopefully in Pittsburgh or Atlanta next year. That would be awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Pittsburgh, not Atlanta.
I was about to say Jake is hoping it's Pittsburgh.
Not Atlanta.
Russell Wilson to the Steelers, or you think a surprise team like the Vikings?
I could see the Vikings.
Okay, well,
Steelers. I could see Tomlin being a guy that's like, you know who I want? I want a leader. I want a guy that's been there and done that. I want Russell Wilson. I could see that happening. I could see that going.
yeah,
My,
if they swing and miss on Justin Fields, yeah, I could see
I
Wilson
think
to
more.
the Steelers.
I think my guess, if I had to take a guess, would be Russell Wilson to the Steelers, Justin Fields to the Falcons, and then Kirk Cousins back to the Vikings.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't
I
think
think
Cousins is going to leave Minnesota. I don't think that's going to happen.
I agree. I agree with that as well. But yeah, appreciate your questions, John. You had Freddie in here, Jory, Syjan, Steven, everyone else who I might have missed. Appreciate all of you. We'll definitely be back next week. We're here every Tuesday at 7 o'clock. So make sure y'all tune in. Brett, do you have line in the sand after this?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
Cool.
Well, you guys stay tuned for Wrestling Talk on Line in the Sand. We're in WrestleMania season. A lot of great storylines going on in WWE, so you want to check them out to get caught up on all that. But until next week, this is the Big Three. We're out of here. We'll see you guys. Enjoy the rest of your night.